Hello, everyone, and welcome to Kilowatt, a podcast about electric vehicles, renewable energy, autonomous driving, and much, much more. My name is Bodhi, and I am your host. And on this episode, I sat down with Shaun Howarth, who is just a really nice guy. Like, Shaun and I have been emailing back and forth for, I don't know, a year and a half or so. And he was talking about how he's from New Zealand. He's traveled all over the world as a physics teacher. And he's lived all over the world as a physics teacher, and then he resettled back into New Zealand, and he, bought an electric vehicle, bought a new house, equipped the house with batteries and solar panels. And I kind of wanted to get a different perspective because obviously I live in North America, which is, in the Northern Hemisphere. This is a very Northern Hemisphere perspective show. I don't talk much about the Southern Hemisphere, although I do love New Zealand and all the other countries and places in the world that are in the Southern Hemisphere. I don't think the show has much representation in that regard. So one day I just asked Shaun, I was like, do you want to come on and chat about your experiences with your, renewable energy? He's got an electric motorcycle. He has a Model 3. And I was just curious what that experience was like in New Zealand. Let's get a different perspective on the show. And Shaun happily came on and we had a nice chat. And honestly, this is a chat. It's not an interview. This is just a conversation that Shaun and I had, and I think you're going to enjoy it. But before we get to the conversation, I do need to let you know that even though Shaun currently lives in New Zealand, he is in the United States right now. He's in New Hampshire, or at least he was at the time of this conversation. So he's going to make references to different places that he's lived, but he's going to say, something like, well, where I'm at right now, or here we have this. He's referring to New Hampshire, not New Zealand or any of the other places he's lived. So if he says, here we have a motorcycle rally, that's in New Hampshire at the time of the interview. All right, let's go ahead and welcome Shaun to the show.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
All right. So you and I were just chatting, and so I've gotten to know you just a little bit. We've emailed back and forth. And over the last 5 or so minutes, we really got to know each other. Can you just take a few minutes and tell the audience a little bit about yourself so they know who's talking?
Okay. Yep. I'm originally from New Zealand. And what we do in New Zealand when we turn about 23, after we've got our degrees in that, we did this thing called the Great OE, which is just the overseas experience. Because New Zealand is so far away from everywhere, a lot of people go to England and work in London for 2 years, then come back to New Zealand. Now, my father was English, so I had a New Zealand and a British passport, so I didn't have to worry about only working for 2 years. So I left New Zealand in 1998 and finally went back there in 2020. So I was away for a little bit longer than 2 years. And as I was trained as a school teacher, a high school physics teacher, actually, I taught all around the world in numerous countries, including the US 3 times, actually, in North Carolina, Colorado, and Indianapolis and Indiana. I pretty much went around the world working and living in places rather than being a tourist, actually. So, yeah.
That's nice. It gives that's a nice perspective to have.
Yeah.
I've lived in Arizona for 20 years, and it's the place that I've probably lived the most of my life, except for Alaska, which is where I was born.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I'll have to do the math to see if I've crossed over, but I've only lived in like 4 or 5 places my entire life. So being able to live in a bunch of different places and experience what it's like at different places around the world as more than just a tourist is awesome. That's what I look for when I go out of town. So you moved back to New Zealand in 2020.
Yep.
I'm assuming you bought a house. It sounds like you bought some solar panels and some battery. Why don't we talk about that just a little bit? What was the like driving factor? Because you were just coming back. Is energy expensive in New Zealand? Was it an environmental thing? What was your motivation?
Not really. As I said before, I used to be a physics teacher. probably still am a physics teacher, but so I was aware of solar panels and how they worked and all that sort of thing, and they're a lot more efficient than they were, say, even 10 years ago. And I thought I'm not big on living off the grid, but I like to be as independent from it as I possibly could. And I thought solar panels or wind power, for example, would be another thing. And I thought solar panels would be a better thing to have a look at because, of course, they require no maintenance, except every now and then hosing them down if they got a little bit dirty. And I just bought a house, to be honest, as a 47-year-old and living all around the world. I didn't own houses. So coming back to New Zealand, I realized I was going to pretty much probably stay there, sorry. And I thought, what the heck, maybe I should buy a house. So I bought a house in a small town, literally in the middle of nowhere, which is similar to where I grew up when I was young. It was a small town. So I'm quite happy not being in a big city, and I've worked in big cities around the world, so that was no problem. And I just thought environmentally, the good thing about New Zealand is that most of the electricity, like 80% of the electricity, is from renewable sources anyway, whether it's hydro. We have a bit of geothermal in the Northern Island. We have a lot of wind farms as well. We still burn the odd bit of coal, but 80% of it, 80 to 85% of it is renewable sources. So I thought I might as well make my own renewable energy. And first of all, I put, I think, about 4 kilowatts of panels on the roof. And in New Zealand at the time, I'm pretty sure you can have more than 5 kilowatts, but if you're not home and it's really sunny, the most you can send back to the grid, not that you make huge amounts of profit from sending electricity back to the grid anyway, they will only accept 5, so you're wasting any extra you have. So I increased that to 5. I also installed, I think, 10 kilowatt hours of batteries as well. So when I'm not at home, if I'm out at work or whatever, it stores in the batteries. And to be quite honest, I increased that as well to 50, to end up being 15 kilowatts. And during the summer, that would fill up by 10:30 in the morning. So that would fill up first before it would send anything to the grid. So
nice.
And then when it gets dark at night, which during the summer is probably 9:30 at night, I live off the batteries.
Nice. And you were telling me that you have an EV and your wall connector goes straight from the batteries to your car.
I think Tesla does that if you have their wall connector and their power wall and that sort of thing now. I think you can opt for that in their little in their app. But I've got a Chinese made EVSE, and it's connected with little CT clamps to the power that's coming in for the solar panels, and so it knows to direct that to the car if it's plugged in until the car is fully charged. Yeah. Nice. Oh, another thing, I've got a Tesla Model 3, and I don't know. I think you have these in the US, but a lot of them in New Zealand have the LFP battery, which you can charge to 100% every time. So I never have to worry about, keeping it at 80 because I'm not going to use it, occasionally or things like that. So I reckon the LFP battery, although apparently it's not as high performance, but then again, do I need to get from 0 to 100, 0 to 62 in 2.5 seconds?
Yeah,
I don't really need to.
yeah. My Model Y long range doesn't have the best takeoff when you compare it to other EVs, but it's got better takeoff than my friends' cars. They're gas cars. So it still throws you back in the seat a little bit. So
yeah.
All right. You also had an MG EV SUV, and what you say that was the ZS?
Yeah, it was the MG ZS. Yeah.
Okay, there you go. And what was your thoughts on that? Because you bought that one first, and then you went with the Model 3.
Yeah. I'm trying to think when they first came into New Zealand at the end of 2020. So I got one of the first ones, and it's only a relatively small battery. I think, to be honest, I think it's only 44. The version that I've got was 44. I think the newer version has maybe 55 or maybe even higher than that. I can't remember. Um, but I drove that from where I used to live in the North Island down to we have a ferry that goes across to the South Island, and drove right to the bottom of the South Island where I live in New Zealand. And that's like 600 or 700 miles. And the good thing in New Zealand is that the DC fast chargers, they all work. Yeah, and they're not the fastest though. I mean, I know in the US you have like 350s, although it depends on what your car might be able to take that. In New Zealand, a lot of our chargers are just for like 50 kilowatts. We have a few 350s, but a lot of them are 50 kilowatts. But I mean, I had no problem. I was in no mad rush to. I don't need to. I don't need a 2-second break to fill up my car and get on my way. I mean,
Sure.
yeah.
Well, that kind of leads me to my next question, which is, what's the charging infrastructure look like there? It sounds like your uptime's great. Can you
Yeah.
find a charger when you need one?
Yeah, a lot of the time, there's only one charger, and of course, even though most of them have a CHAdeMO and CCS, we have CCS2, which is same sort of thing as your CCS1, except one of the ports is slightly different.
It's a little smaller.
And I think CCS2, which is what New Zealand and Europe has, and I think Australia as well, I think it's a bit more. There are a few less bugs than the CCS1, but I've never had any problem. I've had one problem numerous times I've used them, and you just call up we don't have 1-800, we have 0800 numbers, and you just call them up, and quite often they can reset it remotely, and it's usually good to go. There are very few times where I've come across one that hasn't been, they can't get going again. And
That's nice.
sometimes there's more than one in that city. And like the big cities, there's lots. If you're traveling up and down the outskirts of the islands, they say there's one every 75 kilometers, which is about, 50 miles. So there's a DC charge every 50 miles minimum.
Okay.
That's nice. Not too bad. Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice. I once had, after I got my car, my father and I went to a movie, and we pulled up to this Blink charging station. It's level 2, no big deal. So I plug in, I get on the app. I can't find, you have to tell it which one you're at. I can't find the one that we're sitting at and sitting in front of. There's like 5 or 6 of them there. It's in front of an office building. And I was like, oh, well, I'll just call them. And they're like, well, where are you? When I tell them the cross streets, and they're like, yeah, we don't know which charger you're on. I was like, this is a terrible experience. This is an absolutely terrible experience. And my father-in-law, who I'm trying to convince to buy an EV, he's like, okay. Like, this was not a great experience. And I was like, you're right.
I was listening to another podcast today where people were saying quite a lot. It might have been an English one, actually, where they were saying a lot of those charges were put in years ago because the government was giving them an incentive, like paying a certain percentage of the cost to put them in. And unfortunately, they paid for them to be put in, but no one looks after them.
Oh.
Yeah. So, yeah.
There are
sort of big, yeah.
Yeah, and it's kind of a good time to mention this because I was gonna talk about it on the show that I did on yesterday, but I guess the biggest problem with all of the IRA money that's supposed to go to the charging infrastructure here in the U.S. is it's very difficult and time consuming to fill out the paperwork and then get the proper approvals at the federal level. So it's difficult at the local level if you're just going to pay for it all yourself. And then it's even more difficult at the federal level. So we have seven fast chargers that have been deployed in, a year and a half or so here in the US, which is not a great number.
Yeah, no. speaking of incentives, the we did a general election at the end of last year, so we changed the government. It was a Labor government, which is like your Democrats, and it's now turned to a more conservative. They call themselves liberal and conservative. Well, I call them that, but they're pretty much middle of the road, to be honest with it, whoever you choose. And the good thing is about in New Zealand, the government, we have only a 3-year term. So if we don't like them, we get rid of them after 3 years. But when the previous government was in, they had, you could get, if you bought an EV, they gave you, I think when I got my first one, there was no incentives whatsoever. And so it was 2020. Then I think they had a clean car discount or rebate. And all you had to do was buy a car, supply the receipt for the car, show that it was registered, and all that sort of thing, and then tell them your bank account. And all of a sudden, I think for the Model 3 that I bought, I think I got, all of a sudden there was almost $9,000 deposited into my bank account.
Nice.
So there was none of that. I know you have tax, what is it? Sorry, over there. I'm here now. Over here, sorry, you have those 7,500 tax.
The tax credit.
Credit. That's right. Yeah. So you got to file your taxes. So sometimes you might have to wait for a year before everything goes through. In New Zealand, it was like, no, you prove you bought the car, you've got the car's on the road. Okay, we'll give you the money. And like it took less than probably a month to get it. Yeah. So
yeah, here when I bought my car, I had to wait till I filed my taxes. I actually had an accountant, and I gave the lady all the stuff, and she said, "Okay, we got this. I'll get this done in a couple of weeks." And I was like, "Great." And then she called me back up 2 days later, and she goes, "I don't understand how to do the IRA tax credit for your car. So you can either pay somebody else, and I think it was going to be another $300 to pay somebody else to do it, or you can just come get your taxes and have somebody else do it." And I went and grabbed my taxes, and then I found an amazing tax person that way. But I don't know what it looks like on the tax side. But that's one of the reasons why we went to an accountant this year, or a tax professional this year, to do our taxes, because I didn't feel comfortable doing it either. I didn't want to do it wrong.
Yeah.
So it's good that it's streamlined and easy. Let's talk politics.
It used to be. Let me tell you what happened.
Okay, go ahead.
When the new government came in, I think it was in October last year, they said, okay, that payment, because the payment had gone down to 7.5 at that stage, I think. They said, okay, that's going to stop in December. December the 31st is going to stop. And so a lot of electric cars are being bought before the 31st of December. And then looking at the numbers before and then after 31st of December, there's quite a dramatic drop in the amount of cars. So the government, it's funny, the government is an incentive. The government can give you incentives, but when you think about it, it's the same for the same over here. It's actually money that you're giving the government to give back to you.
Yeah.
So it's like,
yeah. They're allowing you to have your own money back.
Yeah.
That's what
So
it is.
it's quite funny. I was thinking about that today. I was thinking, what you're doing is actually allowing the government to give you back your money. Yeah. But anyway, that stopped on 31st of December. And the government, before they came in October, they were told, they told everyone that it's going to end. They said, but we're going to put 10,000, don't quote me on this. It was definitely a lot anyway, maybe 10,000 charges around New Zealand. And I don't know how many they've put in yet, but I don't think I've seen an increase of 10,000 charges.
What's the, like, we'll talk about the public sentiment as far as EVs, but first let's talk about the government outlook. Like, what's the political, I guess is a better way to put it, view of EVs? What are the politicians saying? Is it like here?
I'm trying to, it's not a big issue that's brought up very often. So I don't think there's I don't think there's animosity against it. but it's definitely not like everyone knows we should be green, and everyone knows, but a lot of people that I've even worked with, educated people, I told them I had an electric car. They said, "Oh, those things always catch on fire." So there's crazy how much. And I said, "Really?" And I said, "Oh, and all the batteries. There's a place in France where there's this pile of batteries, from used EVs." I said, "Really? Can you? Where have you got that information from? Well, I'd like to see that." And of course, that's when they go, "Oh, someone told me." Like, geez, you should really investigate some of your sources, And so there are people that still have the old adage that, oh yeah, they're no better um, than fossil fuel cars, but and they might use more resources to make them, but as soon as you start driving them, they're not making any more pollution, or anything like that. So
Yeah, there's
yeah,
that right around 40,000 kilometers. It kind of
yeah,
flattens off.
yeah, yeah.
So is that is your answer the same for both of those questions? Is that the general public's point of view too? Is we need to go green?
Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of people, like, I'm not an evangelist, like I don't preach blah blah blah. But if anyone asks me about it, I'll say, okay, this is how I found it. And they go, oh, they don't go far enough. I said, I've driven up and down the country numerous times. I said, and they said, oh, but you have to wait for 3 hours to charge it. I said, really? I said, I've never waited for 3 hours to charge my car. There's just there are some there's a lot of misinformation out there, and it's like when I've got an electric motorcycle, which we'll probably talk about later,
Mhm.
and the longest I ever stopped to charge that was 13 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because I was talking to Jamie, who is a Patreon supporter from Ireland, and we almost had the same exact conversation over email this week
Yeah,
in terms of people know you need to go green, but also there's a lot of misinformation out there.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's not like they're totally against it; they just don't have the right information.
yeah. I remember one of the places I worked at, I said, I told some teacher that I had an electric car, and he goes, oh, I need to drive up to Nelson, which I don't know was 600 miles away. He said, oh, I can't do that with an electric car. I said, why not? He goes, oh, I have to recharge it and things like that. And I'm thinking, well, don't can you drive all the way up there in a car? Don't you ever have to stop? And he goes, oh yeah, but as soon as you try and get some people to think about what they're saying, they're like, oh, okay. Sometimes they get frustrated by being told the truth.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and I think a little bit of it is, it's kind of scary.
yeah,
They're really expensive. It's kind of scary. Um, a lot of people don't deal well with change,
yeah.
and you have to look at it. You have to change your mindset when it comes to your
Yeah.
vehicle.
Like as I told you before, like I didn't test drive any electric car before I bought one. I just, as I said, I researched the topic. I mean, YouTube, wonderful resource, not always true, but but I mean, you'd look at more than one video. You look at 20 videos about similar things, and so when I got my vehicle, I knew exactly how to plug it into a DC charger. I knew I had to get those little fob things, those little RFID things, or you could just use your phone to start the charger if you just said the companies whose DC fast charger it was. Um, yeah, maybe I'm not as stuck in my ways as other people are, but and yeah, I knew what the limitations were, and I didn't consider them to be limitations, to be
Yeah,
honest. Yeah.
and that what you bring up something that I didn't even consider. Are there Tesla superchargers in New Zealand?
Yeah, where I am in the South Island, there's in the North Island, there's quite a few. In the
Okay,
South Island, there was when I first got mine, there were four,
okay,
which and the South Island is the biggest island, but that's where less people live, like less than 1 million people live there. Um, but there were a couple in the big tourist centres. Queenstown is one of the big tourist centres in the South Island where everyone goes to ski and all that sort of thing. There was one, well, you have banks of them in the US where there might be 30 charges. In New Zealand, you go to we've only got version 2 ones. Oh, there are some version 3 ones, but most of the places are version 2. The older ones where you're either at 1A and 1B and you halve the
Yeah.
120 kilowatts. Yeah.
Yeah. Keep people charging. You have to split the energy.
Yeah. And like in one, like a lot of the sites I've been to, there's only 4. So there's two two of them, two pairs. Yeah.
Right.
So, but
Interesting.
I'll be honest. When I got my car, I went up to the one in Queenstown, and because I wanted to charge it, I wanted to try it. Again, so easy, just plug it in, same as they are in the US. You just plug it in, it knows who you are, bills your credit card, no problem at all. Whereas the other ones, of course, you have to use your phone to. But the good thing is, dissimilar to the US, our charges for Teslas are the CCS2 ones, which is the same as every other electric car. So we originally, of course, Tesla chargers were only able to be used by Teslas, but I think they're all open in New Zealand now. And of course, the good thing is Teslas could use Tesla ones, and Tesla could use non-Tesla ones because we all have the same, same socket.
Yeah. Having the same, connections is a huge benefit. I understand why we went with CCS one and Chatamo and Tesla's charger or connector here, because at the time Tesla did its own thing, and the Society of Automotive Engineers did something, and then what was it? Nissan that did Chatamo.
Yeah, the Chatamo.
Yeah, they had their own thing. So I get why we have so many different connectors, but it makes sense just to have one. Europe and New Zealand and all the other countries that have CCS2s kind of did it right.
We all have different wall socket plugs, don't we? Like,
I
mean, there's more of them than there are different.
Yeah, that is true. That is true.
I think one thing I find interesting is that even though you use miles and gallons and all that thing over there, over here, we're finally bringing you into the metric world by kilowatts and kilowatt hours. So well done.
Don't tell anybody that. We'll have to change it to something else.
Yeah. Imagine if someone said to you how many calories were in your battery, because calories is a measurement of energy, right? So
yeah. Or we could go steampunk and measure everything in BTUs or whatever.
Oh yeah. Actually, what does BTU says for something like British thermal units or something?
It's the amount of heat to, I think it's 1 gallon of water, 1 degree Fahrenheit or something like that. So tell me about your motorcycle. What do you got there?
Okay, I've got the only one in New Zealand. Actually, there is another one, but it's an older version of it. An Energica.
What is it now?
Energica, which is an Italian. Oh, you might have heard the word Energica.
Okay.
Yeah, if you open up your internet and just type in Energica, which is energy ICA. Actually, there's you can buy them in the US. There's Energica of New England, and he sells them. But I have the road bike version of it. There's the MotoGP, which is the the motorcycle road racing sort of circuit, and Energica had they had the electric version of that where every rider had to ride the same bike, the same make of bike.
Oh, nice.
And they did that from, I think it was 2019 to 22. I think Ducati is now the sole bike used in that. But it's I think it has a 21.5 kilowatt hour battery, which I think you can use about 19. And over the Christmas period, I rode that from my place up to my brother's, which is about 600 miles. And it probably gets about 200 Ks, which is about 120 miles on a charge. But as I said, the charges are like 75 Ks away or 50 miles away. I mean, and I went up the west coast of the South Island, which is the more isolating part. And yeah, I had no problem.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. How does it ride? It looks like a friend of mine had, I think it was a Yamaha road bike that kind of looks similar to this.
Yep. It's they are quite heavy. Like I'd say they're probably 1.5 times heavier than a normal bike, or like a normal ice bike, because the battery, it just weighs so much. But as soon as you get up to any speed, which it gets to very quickly, you don't notice it. Yeah, the only time you ever really notice is when you're doing very slow turns. Yeah, but
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask, how the battery changes the handling for that.
Yeah, in terms of speed, anything above like 30 miles an hour, you wouldn't notice. But when you're doing like very slow 5 kilometer turns, it's you feel it a bit more. Although it does have a reverse.
Oh,
Yeah. So yeah, if you don't want to push it back, you just put it in reverse and slow reverse. Then it has a slow reverse and a slow forward. So if you want to do some quick maneuvers, just in the car park and things like that. And then,
what was the benefit of the slow forward? Is it just more torque, or is it just?
It's just like if you got it in a parking area, you hold a certain button down, it goes into reverse, and if you hold it again, it goes into forward. It's just slow, so you can just move it around. Because literally, if you're standing there and you've got the bike engaged, and someone comes up, and if some little kid comes and twists the handle, it'll just fly out from underneath you.
It seems like New Zealand would be the kind of place that would people would just be going nuts on a motorcycle just because of how beautiful it is.
Well, when I drove up the west coast of the South Island, which is the more rugged part, because that's where the weather comes from, right? Because the western part of the island catches all the rain and all that sort of thing. And it's always very green. Our Southern Alps, which run the length of the South Island, come pretty much straight out of the ocean, straight up into the hills. So it's very picturesque, very green. And but the problem is it rains quite a lot. And it was the middle of summer, Christmas is the middle of summer for us down there. And I thought it'd be a great time to go up. Over that summer period, I think I motorcycled for about 14 days, and I think 11 of them rained. Yeah, so yeah, which is not it's not the worst. It's not the worst, but it's definitely not the best way to experience a motorcycle. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but I don't know if how familiar you are with American culture in terms of motorcycle culture. But when I was a firefighter in Nevada, and I used to work with a bunch of guys that would go to like Sturgis, and they do these big giant rides. And there was one guy that he was injured on the job, so he trailered his bike and then would stop like 15 miles out of Sturgis and drive in. But everybody else drove their bikes. And the idea of riding 14 days, even in the rain, to those guys it's totally worth it. That's exactly why you buy a bike. And then you have the other people here in the United States who will trailer their bikes. And again, the one gentleman was retired and he got an injury, so it's not like he could do it for that same amount of time. But there are people who are perfectly healthy who trailer their bikes in and stuff like that. So I don't know if you're seeing that at the motorcycle rally where you're at now, but
I'm not sure whether people do. Well, who knows? One thing. Years ago, actually, I noticed this. There used to be a ferry that went from here at Portland, Maine, up to Yarmouth in Nova Scotia. And I decided one time when I finished working here, but I'm going to bike. So I biked from here over to Portland, then caught the ferry across to Nova Scotia and cycled all around on a bicycle, not on a motorcycle, on a bicycle in Nova Scotia. And there are a bunch of Harley riders that were coming back when I was coming back. And all I could talk about was how they couldn't believe they had to wear helmets in Canada. It was
Yeah.
hilarious. And I was thinking, and I was on a bicycle and I was wearing a helmet. And I was thinking, my God, if you guys never fallen off and hit your head. Yeah.
Yeah. My friends who were firefighters knew exactly what happens when you fall off and hit your head on a
Oh,
bike,
you would do, yeah.
and they still didn't wear helmets.
Yeah.
Every now and again, maybe they put one of those that's barely a brain bucket on, depending on the state. But yeah, they didn't want to wear helmets.
Well, in New Hampshire as well, you don't have to wear a helmet. And it's funny how the state lotto is live free or die. It should be live free and die.
A lot of libertarians up there in New Hampshire.
What's that?
A lot of libertarians up there in New Hampshire. Yeah. Excellent. Shaun, is there anything that I didn't ask you that we were going to talk about? Did I forget anything?
Oh, one thing about what was I thinking about? We're talking about before about some misconceptions, and people were saying, electric cars don't go far enough. I used to have, as I said, we talked about before, I used to have an MG, and I think it used to get maybe 200k, so 120, 150 maybe, if I had a tailwind. And now I have like the lowest, range. That's what I want to talk about. The lowest range of all the Teslas. And I never have a concern. I've never had a concern, even when I first got an electric car, about running out of charge. I've ran out of gasoline in a car more times than I've run out of electricity in a car.
Yeah. This is I've run out of gas so many times. That was not because of any problem with the vehicle or the gas station. That was, I didn't have any money in my pocket. And I was trying to push it to somewhere. And but as far as running out of energy goes for the electric car, it's not even ever been close. Like, I think when I first got my car, I had a level 1 charger. I didn't have the level 2 installed yet, because I was trying to go a month on just level 1 to see if I could do it. And in the heat in Arizona,
I was the same when I first started.
Yeah, you can't do it when it's hot here. Maybe I could have done it if I would have bought the car in December when it's cooler, but you can't do it here when it's hot because your range goes down significantly. I think when I charge to 80%, my range in the wintertime is around 250 miles, 252. In the summertime, my estimated range is in the 230s, and that's that's optimistic. It's less than that. So,
to be honest, my range, I'm trying to think of what the change in temperature is. Let's say freezing to in the winter. I'd say in the morning, if you got up, it might be freezing. Then it'd get up to maybe 85, 90 in the summer where I live. And I noticed very little difference in range between summer and winter. Yeah.
Shaun, do you have social media? Do you have a place if people want to connect with you? Do you have any of that stuff?
Not really. I mean, I do have them, but I never use them. So
that's fair.
Yeah. Like, I have a Facebook page. It's pretty simple. It's just Shaun Howarth. I mean, if anyone searches that and they see a guy on a bicycle, then that's probably me.
Well, Shaun, thanks for coming on and sharing your experiences with us. And I appreciate you reaching out and agreeing to be on.
Yep, no problem.
Thanks so much.
Okay.
All right. I want to thank Shaun for coming on the show and sharing his story with us. Shaun did share some links with me for, some videos that he's done in the past. So I'm going to put those links in the show notes. And hopefully today's conversation gave you a little bit more perspective on what's going on out there in the world. I hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as I enjoyed recording it. So thanks again, Shaun. If you want to email me, you can. It's Bodie, BODIE at 918digital.com. If you want to follow me on X, I am at 918digital. I also have another podcast called Beyond the Post, where Rob Dunwood and I interview creators and we talk about just the process of creating podcasts or social media or you name it. Like the goal is to get a wide view of what it's like to create a digital content. And on our latest episode, we had interview 1 and 2 with Lamar Wilson, and I'll put links to the show in the show notes. But if you're interested in that kind of thing, I think you're really going to enjoy it. Lamar is the CEO of Unboxing. He's got over 3 million followers across different social media platforms, and he's a lot of fun and a genuinely nice human being. So hopefully everyone goes and checks that show out. All right, everybody, that is it for me this week. I guess it's Friday. Today's Friday. So on Tuesday's episode, it will come a little bit later in the evening because it's a Tesla earnings call day. So we got to wait for the earnings call to actually be recorded. And then I got to listen to it. And then I got to make notes on it. And then I got to, record the episode and get it out. So that will go out on Tuesday night. And then we'll go back to our regularly scheduled news on Friday. I hope everyone has a great weekend, and I will see you on Tuesday.